listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to give us a call, 800-610-7035 is worldwide toll-free. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight. And the rest of the 24-hour clock, we play the best of the X-Zone. And all this is happening at www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is David Franklin Farkas. He is a professional house healer and ghost rescuer. Now, he is a thought leader, independent rogue scholar, and master practitioner in the areas of remote viewing and healing of land, building, people, businesses, and situations. David has over 35 years of experience. The last 12 years focused full-time on remote healing as a service for businesses and individuals, especially problematic real estate. He provides clearing and metaphysical coaching for individuals. David is a gifted, intuitive, and spiritual healer. He does remote energetic healing work, clearing real estate, people, businesses, and situations. He works on cases involving buildings, land, people, negotiations, legal matters, travel, and situations of all kinds. He is also a sought-after, humorous, and controversial international speaker whose signature talk is entitled, Is Everything You Know About Ghost... Oh, I'm sorry. Is Everything You Know About Ghost is Dead Wrong? Did I say that right? I read it right.
There's an extra is in there in the copy, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
It's all right. I thought maybe I was seeing things. Maybe a ghostwriter. And David, welcome to the X-Zone again, my friend. How have you been?
I've been very well, thank you. It's wonderful to be back. It's been a while.
It has been. And you know what? Things are getting spookier and spookier with more and more people coming out of the woodwork with stories, and more people, it seems, are opening up to the reality of a world that is not as three-dimensional and hard as we think it is.
Well, that's what Einstein said 100 years ago, but most people haven't caught up. The planet is changing very quickly, and it's like everybody is getting a healing 24/7.
David, for our listeners who may not have had the pleasure of hearing you the last time you were with us, could you tell them what your path was like from the first time you noticed that you may have been a little special to where you're a full-time and highly regarded member of the metaphysical community these days?
Wow, that may be the whole show.
All right, it was nice talking to you. Next!
You know, it wasn't until I was in my late 20s and started practicing yoga, and my yoga teacher urged me, shall we say, heavy-handedly to start meditating. And almost immediately I had experiences in my body, but also saw things that were, for somebody who had a tendency to freak out, was pretty freaky. And I just looked at it and went, well, I'm not crazy, and this stuff is weird, so there's somebody that knows what this is. I better find them. And I'm an old guy. It was a long time ago, and there wasn't somebody on every street corner doing this stuff. So I found some people. I started learning hands-on healing methods and learning about metaphysics. But the turning point was when my father became seriously ill, and I was on the East Coast. He was on the West Coast, and I rushed out to take care of him. And his boss took me out in the hallway of the hospital and with no segue and no tee-up said, "Do you know anything about psychic surgery?" To which my response was, "Oh, it's going to be one of those days, is it?" And he introduced us to a healer who had been trained by psychic surgeons in the Philippines and had good results with people that had the problem my dad had. And while I was going through the process of taking care of Dad, someone else said, "You've got to meet this Cherokee medicine man. He's done some similar things to what you talk about, and I think you guys would hit it off."
All right, we're going to have to do a little bit of a cliffhanger here, my friend, because I've got to take a short commercial break.
Okay.
X-Zone Nation, David Franklin Farkas is our very special guest this hour. It's always great having this enlightening gentleman on the show. Yeah, I kind of said that right, didn't I, Craig? When we come back, more with David Franklin Farkas and talking about ghosts and much more. More of what goes bump in the night when we return from this break. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. David Franklin Farkas is our special guest this hour, www.househealing.com. And you've got a radio show on Empower Radio. And how can our listeners listen to you on your own show?
Yeah, the show is The Farkas Files. The truth is in here somewhere. Yeah, the guy who started the Empower Radio had a sense of humor and said, "How about we do this?" And you can find out more at thefarkasfiles.com.
I love it. Hold on, I got to write this down. The Farkas Files. Farkas Files.
Yeah, we've been doing that for 5 years now. We've got hundreds of interviews with amazing people. It's been wonderful.
All right, we were talking about you went to see your dad, and you were basically being introduced to a psychic healer and then a Native American healer.
Yeah, a Cherokee medicine man, and it became clear that Dad was not going to go for either medical treatment or anything that I was going to bring to him, and I spent the time with him helping him let go. But it also became clear that these two people were my teachers. And the last person I said goodbye to was the Kiowa, the Cherokee medicine man. And he said, "You coming back?" I said, "Yeah." "You know when?" Said, "No, but I think you're going to tell me, right?" And he gave me a date and a time to pick him up. And I went back to the East Coast and cleaned up my life as well as I could and bought a new truck and drove cross country in 4 days and picked him up and was dropped in the middle of a sacred ceremony for a week. So that's how that relationship proceeded. He would plop me in the middle of things that most white people never got to be involved in, and I had the privilege of being taught with tribal members.
Do you think that things happen in life randomly, or do you believe that everything we do is part of a plan?
I don't think either of those describes what goes on. People ask me, how did I wind up where I wound up? And it really was a series of small decisions where I said, "Oh, look at this. I wonder what will happen if I follow it." So I always had a choice.
Right.
It was clear to me that there was something going on in my life that I didn't understand, and I was curious about it and wanted to pursue it. But at every one of these turning points, I could have said, "Oh, this is too weird." And, that's not my personality, but the choice was always there.
Your blurb says that you apply mature technologies of indigenous healers to today's world. Does that mean that after meeting the psychic surgeon and the Cherokee healer that the studying you did and what you witnessed puts you into the same category as a shaman?
Well, I spent 3.5 years with the two of them doing all kinds of crazy stuff. At the height of it, I was working with them, working at night in a locked psych hospital and living in a camper. So, it makes a real good walkabout story.
Yeah.
The thing about calling yourself a shaman is there's a lot of politics around that. And I refused and resisted calling myself a shaman, but what I found was when I described my work, people would say, "Oh, you're a shaman."
Oh, okay.
So I finally just accepted that the shortcut explanation in conversation was that I do shamanic work, that I'm a shaman. And so there are people who would be annoyed with that, but it was expedient.
So tell me, David, how is shamanic work different from that of a psychic?
Different from being a psychic?
Yeah.
A shaman has psychic skills, obviously. The difference is that shamanic work is going into another dimension, into the energy, and doing the work that you do there, seeing what's going on there, changing things there, getting information there, and then coming back into physical reality, and physical reality then unfolds in a different way based on what you did in that other non-physical dimension. And that's a very specific way of working, and that's not typically what psychics do. It's not what mediums do. It's a different kind of work.
You work remotely. How does that work?
Well, it works quite well. I get results.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Basically, I can shift my consciousness so I'm leaving focus on the physical into focus on the energy. And when you do that, there is no time and space. So I can go to any location, and it's in my imagination would be the way I explain it. Mm-hmm. It's like a dream. It's like seeing it in my mind. But I can go wherever I need to go to do whatever I need to do. And when I come back, for example, real estate is a lot of what I do, and houses that won't sell. And, magically, if that's the right word, the house sells, or people feel better, or, the work happens. I used to work on site, and after, when you're young and stupid, you do things just because it looks exciting and a challenge. And I've been knocked against a wall and choked.
Really?
By an entity, which I know some people say cannot happen. Well, let me tell you. And I've had a couple of other things happen. So my feeling is, why would I want to be on site if I can get the same results at a lower expense and aggravation for my clients? They don't have to pay my expenses. Mm-hmm. And not put myself in that very physical danger. Because if they come after me here, there's so much protection up here that they're in trouble.
So, how do you protect yourself against them coming to where you are? Because they must have their ways of backtracking.
Well, again, there is no space and time in the energy. So yes, but there are several things. I put up various kinds of protections. Mm-hmm. You can think of it like Star Trek and shields up kind of thing.
Right.
There are entities and allies that work with me, that help me, and so they're here. But the other thing, which is kind of odd, when I first realized it really blew my mind, is I've got a reputation. So once they realize who they're dealing with, they will typically back off.
Wow. Is it because your power and your energy demands their respect, and they realize that they're...
No, it's history.
History.
It's street cred. I do a lot of work that other people can't or won't do, dealing with very dark entities.
Can you share an experience with us?
I'm trying to think of one that will not... My concern when I talk about demons is that someone will listen to the show, think that, oh, he does it, so I'll try it.
You know what? I respect that. I respect that. So if you'd feel more comfortable not talking about it, then I have no problem with that.
What I can tell you is that I don't even remember who first taught me how to do that. And years later, a friend of mine who was in a mystery school that bases its tradition on the work of King Solomon asked me that question, and I told him the method. And he got very quiet for a minute, and he said, we just heard about this in class, and it's from a Buddhist tradition that goes back thousands of years called the Demon Eaters. And you're using exactly their method. And I said, I don't know where it came from, but okay, there you have it. At this point, I have allies, I have entities, allies that in most cases will do what needs to be done at my request. So I don't have to put myself on the line, which I'd rather not do. But you can't get away with that if you can't do it yourself.
So if I understand it right, what you're using are ancient techniques that have been modified to work in the world as we know it now, or the level that you deal with is on a level that has stayed the same throughout time?
It's a little bit of both. In this case, it's the same. The darkness functions exactly the same way it always did. The methods for dealing with it are exactly the same as they ever were. Do not do this at home, boys and girls.
Yeah. We've got about a minute and a half before I have to take my news break. What's your take on Ouija boards?
The problem with Ouija boards is they work. There is some kind of agreement that allows the Ouija board to open a portal. And the problem is it's used as a toy. And it's like going down a dark alley in a bad neighborhood to see what happens if you open the door down there. There must be something going on, and maybe it'll be fun. And maybe not. So usually the people on the other side of those doors at the end of dark alleys are dangerous people and are looking for someone to prey on, and that's what happens.
All right, stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation. David Franklin Farkas is our special guest tonight. househealing.com. www.househealing.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this short commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can always send an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, as well as you can listen to the show 7/24/365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. By the way, don't forget, the X-Zone TV show is available online with our compliments from Season 1, www.xzonetv.com. I'm Rob McConnell. David Franklin Farkas and I will be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Our guest this hour is David Franklin Farkas. His website is www.househealing.com. And during, we were talking about Ouija boards, and over the commercial break, you and I were talking about different things. But I'd like to get your opinion as a professional on some of these shows that they have on quote-unquote reality television stations. Do these help, or are these a pain in the butt to the legitimate people like yourself who understand there's a lot more to doing the work than just watching TV, getting a 15-minute crash course on how it's not supposed to be done, and then having people go out there and actually try to do it?
Most of those shows are about paranormal investigation. And that's an interesting field where a lot of people have it as a hobby but call themselves professionals. They have a day job. They think this stuff is cool. They're good at what they do. But basically, if a homeowner is having phenomena and the paranormal investigators come in, unless they have someone on their team who is a medium or a psychic and can work on another level, the best that they will do, they will give the person at the end of all the process is, we found something, you're not crazy. Or, we didn't find anything, so we can't confirm one way or another whether it's phenomena or you're crazy. And a lot of what they do on the TV shows is creating drama just to freak people out, because that's what reality TV is about. It's about drama. So when people come to me to talk about the work that I do and, I want to do what you do, the first thing I say is, if an object moved out of nowhere, an object moved in front of you, what would your reaction be? And if their reaction is fear or freak out or anything else, I'll go, okay, you're not ready. Because at some point you have to it's like doctors and medical people becoming used to blood and smells and people being in agony. With this stuff, you have to get used to weirdness.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Well, let me ask you this, David. Has there ever been a time when you have had the heck scared out of you doing what you do? There
have been a few times, but usually, and that's why I don't work on site if I don't need to, because it's much scarier when it's up close and personal. There have been a few times when it was very freaky, but typically only when I'm on site, because then the empath aspects of my psychic sensitivities come in and I feel it in my body. There are certainly times when I'm working remotely when some entity will try and affect me and I'll feel it and it's creepy. But the other part of it is that I've been doing this a long time, so my reaction to that is very different from most people. Yeah. It's like, oh, no, you don't. So, my concern with the paranormal TV shows is that that most of them are not focused on teaching people who ghosts are, what ghosts are, and a respectful way of dealing with them. It's mostly about the same thing that horror movies are about. It's about being freaked out because being freaked out is fun. Some of the information is interesting and valid, and a lot of it is just, we're going to do this in the dark. And I know, there are going to be people that are very angry at me, but what I want to do with, all the stuff that I do when I talk about ghosts or when anybody asks me, is teach people that ghost phenomena makes sense when you look at it from the perspective of the ghost. Ghosts are people. They still have their personalities, and the personalities range from, little kids that just want to play, grandma who never left the house, to psychotic madmen or military people who still think they're in a battle. And they're going to react to you as who they are, if they notice you at all. because the main thing most people don't realize is 80 to 90% of ghosts don't know they're dead. And so...
How can they know they're not dead? I've never understood that, because
how can they not know they're dead? Yeah.
Yeah, if they try to interact with someone and they get constantly ignored, they don't need to sleep, they don't need to eat.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, many of them are in a moment of time or an activity that they always did, and it loops. So a lot of the stuff that gets considered not being an active haunting are actually people who are there. They're just looping through a moment in time. So they may or may not notice the living. They may or may not notice their environment. I was in an old building once with a friend who's a psychic, and stood there laughing because it was a very haunted place.
Right.
And there were ghosts from 4 different timelines, 4 different periods of time, each of them in clothing appropriate to that time, speaking differently, all of that. None of whom knew that the other ones were there. They were walking through each other. And they certainly didn't notice us.
But are these actual intelligent beings, or are these just energy caught in a magnetic rift?
Aren't we all just energy caught in a magnetic rift?
Well, yeah, I can't walk through a wall, but a ghost can.
Well,
because of the different density and the different ratio of atomic structure.
Right. Well, my joke is that they are now software in a hardware universe. In space time, you need a body for things to function. Mm-hmm. Their body died. They no longer have that particle form of who they were. There is another dimension in which they can sort all that out and make their decisions about this past lifetime and decide whether they're coming back, how they're coming back. But somehow they missed the bus. They didn't take the bus home.
So how do you get them on the next bus?
I used to make it really complicated and hard, especially if it was a large group of people. Mm-hmm. And that's happened where it was, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ghosts, and I try and do triage and just make it incredibly hard. One of the things is there are angels that take care of it. There is the archangel, poorly named the archangel of death. He's the archangel that carries people across, Zadkiel, and all of his assistants. So if you ask for the portal to be opened and ask for him to take care of them, that already sets everything in motion. The other thing is I have found that once you know what you want to convey to somebody or a group, you can package it. So I don't have to go do what a medium does and explain everything and do a counseling session. I send them a message that basically says, yeah, your body died. I know that's confusing. There's a place you should have gone that you didn't get to. No, there's no judgment, and it's all going to be fine. Just go with the nice angels. You'll be okay. Which is really what the message is.
So what part of the hereafter scenario that you deal with on I would imagine, a day-to-day basis is actually as we are led to believe it is through the different philosophies and the different religious philosophies that we're taught in this realm?
Boy, we're going all over the place today, Rob.
Not really, because we're talking about ghosts, and then ghosts relate to.
No, I'm just. It's juicy. I'm enjoying it.
Good.
The main thing that messes it all up is expectations. So if you believe that the streets are paved with gold and there are going to be angels in white robes, and that's not what you see, you think you messed up. And all kinds of other things. If you think you're going to be punished because of something you did and you're sure about how you're going to be punished and where you're going to go, you will go to where everybody else with that belief is staying attracted to all the other people with that belief, believing they're being punished. So there are as many hells as there are beliefs about lack of forgiveness and punishment.
So even though we die physically, we maintain our consciousness, our spiritual consciousness.
We maintain our consciousness, and our thoughts are even more instantaneously manifesting what we believe.
Gotcha.
So the description in the Tibetan Book of the Dead of the bardos in the lower astral plane, where you go through them and there are many, many different kinds of hell and weirdness, that's real. And I think the movie What Dreams May Come does a really interesting job of looking at what heaven is and what hell is. And it's something like that because, how do you really describe all of this?
Right.
I always say it's something like Beetlejuice, but with a lot of upgrades. So, when you cross over and you go into the tunnel and you go to the other side, there is an organized way in which your consciousness is held in love and everything is explained to you and you get to be counseled through what happened in your life. And at the end of it, you go and find your family. The problem is that either someone has such a sudden death they don't know their body died, or they have some story, whether it's their story about the living and how they have to take care of them, or they can't be forgiven, or whatever it is, that keeps them from moving on. And there is a window of opportunity when you die for leaving, and if you don't make the bus, someone has to help you.
All right, so let's say that somebody calls you up and they believe in their heart of hearts that there is a spirit or their home is being haunted. How do you proceed? How do you go to investigate the reality of the claim, and how do you cleanse the house?
Well, I do it. My initial conversation is by phone, and I do a free assessment with people.
Right.
And while I'm talking to them, I tune into what's going on, and I have a paper and pencil process that I do where I can download a lot of information quickly, whether I'm looking at a person or I'm looking at a property. Typically, if it's a property, I will get a satellite photo online so I can mark out ley lines and look for other specific things without having to do it all internally. Although I used to do it that way before we had the sat photos. It's just faster and easier. And I go with faster and easier. Give me a picture of the person so I can put my hand on it and read the picture. Instead of having to tune in. It's always easier that way for me anyway. So I do my analysis on paper because I don't have to go into as deep a trance to do what's basically a reading. And I get all that information, and it will tell me how many entities of what type, and if there are dark entities, how dangerous they are, and all kinds of things that I very quickly, in a matter of a couple of minutes can write down. And then I talk it through with the person and tell them what I've found, and we see how we're going to proceed.
What are some of the easiest ways that people can, that you have helped people to proceed? And Exonation, do not try any of this at home alone. Please, please.
Well, it's almost impossible to explain this kind of stuff in a simple cookbook way. That's why all of this work should be an apprenticeship. You should be with somebody that's done it for a long time and be able to do it by the sensation and the physicality, whether it's psychic physicality or whatever it is, of having that person doing it with you.
Right.
My description of my training is they threw me in the deep end of the pool over and over again and made sure I didn't drown. But you can't just read a book and do it. People start getting results and go, oh, look at me. This is great. So did I. I mean, everybody starts there. But when you get serious, you have to find a teacher. You have to find somebody who is the real deal and will spend the time with you. And so the simple cookbook stuff works some of the time. So, I've had all kinds of different interactions with ghosts, including one in a psych hospital trying to help a client go to sleep. And I went into a room, and there was a ghost in the room that she had never seen before because she had voices because she was an out-of-control psychic. Mm-hmm. And, he's being feisty and in my face. And I said, wait a minute, what year do you think this is? He said, 1873. I'm like, oh, man, you've been doing this for 150 years. Aren't you bored yet? He said, what are you talking about? I said, do you know you're dead? He said, oh, that explains so much. And it was the first time I'd actually, I had heard about those conversations. It was the first time I actually had them. At that point, he still was attached to continuing doing what he was doing because it was what he does. Ah. And I had to push back at him and say, no, you're not going to do that. And, that's when I started becoming the guy from Brooklyn. I don't know. That's not happening that way.
Do they try to get feisty with you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They still have their personality, and they're going to test. And it basically gets down to there's two angels behind you who will take you to where you can sort all this out and it'll all work out fine, or you have to deal with me. Ask somebody who I am and whether you want to do that. It's like, oh, I shouldn't do that, should I? No, you shouldn't. And it's pretty funny because I'm totally the mild-mannered old guy in the physical world.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's what they all say. Hey, David, stand by, old friend. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. X-Zone Nation, David Franklin Farkas is our special guest of this hour. And his website is, all right, do you have your pen and pencil ready? househealing.com. And David and I will be back on the other side as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
All right, X-Zone Nation, our guest this hour, David Franklin Farkas. Now, if you've got a house to sell that is haunted or needs that special savoir-faire, get a hold of David. His website is househealing.com. So tell me, how do you help the real estate agencies sell houses? I know, here you are, a ghost healer, and you do all this great stuff, but what do you do that can actually help a house get sold?
Well, typically it's not the realtor that hires me. It's usually the person trying to sell the house.
Okay.
I wish the realtors would figure out that I'm their secret weapon. There's something in real estate called stigmatized property, which is any house where something terrible happened or a haunted house. And in some places you have to tell people that's what's going on or what happened. And in other places you're not allowed to tell people. It's totally different in every jurisdiction. But they all behave the same way in the marketplace. They take a long time to sell, and the price drops. I've come to believe that any house that behaves that way in the marketplace has a stigma that's not known. There is something there that people are feeling that they can't put their finger on, but it keeps them from buying the house. And that's the stuff that I go after, and I work on the land and the history of the house, and the entities are a part of it, but it's many different kinds of things that I check and clear.
Do the entities try and hide from you when you come into a house? Because I understand that they are able to detect who you are and what power you also bring with you.
I haven't seen that as a big problem, and that may be because of the way I work. I'm not coming into the house and announcing myself. the way somebody that would work on site would do it.
Well, that's right, because you're not working on site, you're working remotely.
Right.
I gotcha.
Right. But the other thing is I will always follow up with clients, and if something gets better and then gets worse, I'll recheck it because of that particular problem. Either I missed something hid, or the empty space made room for somebody that now says, oh, good, there's nobody here. So there's always a possibility in the week after or 2 weeks after that we need to check again and do some tidying up around the edges.
So you deal with spiritual squatters.
One way of putting it.
We've got about a minute left. What are your final thoughts, your words of wisdom, your words of caution for the X Zone Nation?
Well, the main thing is all of this stuff is real, and some people are more sensitive to it than others, but almost everybody has bumped into it. So if you can just accept that there is this other realm that's non-physical and see what it is you're supposed to do with that, whether you're supposed to improve your skills or whatever it is, it's much better than resisting it and saying, no, it couldn't possibly be, because this stuff's real.
And resistance is futile.
Something like that.
Hey, David, it's great talking to you again.
Thanks so much.
No, it's I who thank you.
Always a pleasure.
It's me who thanks you, my friend. Keep the great work up. And I look
you.
forward to the next time you join us back here in the X Zone. But I will be getting a hold of you off air to talk about that case that I was speaking to you about earlier.
Happy to look into that.
You take care of yourself, my friend.
Thanks a lot.
Good night, David.
Good night.
X Zone Nation, our guest this hour has been David Franklin Farkas, and his website is househealing.com. That's it for tonight, X Zone Nation. I'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. So don't forget, if you can help a fellow person out, whether it's by just even giving them a smile, make someone happy today. So until tomorrow, always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night now.